Fuck man, life sucks sometimes. People have bad days, hearts are broken, or you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Those things can be trivial at times. There are people in the world that have it way harder. There's been eras of history that have been filled with turmoil, war, and famine. I know that sounds bleak and all, but Angela's Ashes really fucked me up. It's a great movie and happens to be one of those movies that really takes it out of you. Makes you really appreciate what you got. Angela's Ashes was a memoir written by Frank McCourt in 1996. The film was released in 1999. The film was based on the events that were written by Frank McCourt, where he recounts stories about growing up in Limerick, Ireland. There are several differences between the book and the film, but the real news is the accuracy of the events Frank writes about in his memoir. He has been accused of exaggerating about how bad Limerick was by many other residents. Also, Angela, the mother of Frank, also called his recollections a pack of lies. I don't know what to make of this because I didn't read the book. I'm going to keep this episode all about the film, as a dramatic film, not a biopic. When I review these films, I like to give a little plot overview that can get spoilerish. Most of the time the films aren't that great, so it doesn't matter that much. This is the first time I'm going with a reserved overview and highlight things about the film that are great and why you should watch it. This film is essentially split into 3 parts. First part is Frank being a boy, the second part is when he's an adolescent, and the third part is when he's a young adult. The first part shows when Frankie's family was living in New York and through hardships had to move back to Ireland. When in Ireland, we get the experience of little Frankie's life. From living in the slums of Limerick and the hardships that arose from his father's alcoholism. Alcoholism is a central theme for Frankie's father and later for him. The film focuses a lot on the relationship between Frankie and his family, especially his brothers and his parents. His father throughout the film is a degenerate that cannot keep a real job and spends all the money he does earn on himself. We see how the schools in Ireland were so intertwined with religion. We see how bad of a state Limerick is in, always raining, and the great tragedy that comes from living this type of life. Religion is a big part of the film because it's a big part of Frankie's life. In school, in the home, and in church. There are scenes where Frankie's mother has to basically beg for food at church and Society of St. Vincent de Paul. There's many imagery shown, and even a scene where it directly compares religion to America. Going back to America is Frankie's biggest goal, and everything he does in his young adult life is to go back. His love for America is shown literally in the film with, films. My favorite things to see in film is footage from other films. Frankie talks a lot about his love for films. There are 2 scenes that show other films. This one shows Universal's The Mummy with Boris Karloff released in 1932, and this other scene where it shows a clip from a western that I cannot find the title of. If anyone recognizes the clip, let me know. After this, the film transitioned to Frankie's adolescent life. We get the same things that were shown in young Frankie's life. There's more of a focus between the dynamic of Frankie and his mother Angela. She's the name of the film, so it makes sense that she has a big part in it. We see more about how Angela is handling the same circumstances that Frankie is. We see the love and all the things not lost even when the life situation is terrible. There are several times when Frankie gets sick and has to be cared for by his mother, and it's a beautiful portrayal of the relationship. One time when Frankie was sick and in hospital care for months, he gets an affinity for reading, which foreshadows his adult life as an author. And finally, when the film focuses on young adult Frankie, all the themes show up and combine together to show how Frankie has turned into who he is. The religion, the family, and the education all come together. It explores his relationships he has formed with his friends and lovers, the jobs he had, and figuring out what he wants to do, living on his own, and ultimately his goals he has been trying to reach. Then we get the ending. I actually love this film. It's technically very well shot. We do get some overused shots, but they are meant to establish the space, such as the raining and the water on the streets. It actually takes up more time than someone might think. The framing is well managed and isn't just there to be there. Blocking is done well, and it shows more than what is in front of the camera. The soundtrack is cool and fits well with the scenes it is placed in, but my favorite is the use of color, or maybe the lack thereof. The film is not meant to be bright. It is gloomy and grimy to enhance the environment of Ireland. When the color is used, it draws attention to the viewer. It can be places, but more importantly, it is used to highlight Angela. She walks around in this red overcoat that really pops in whatever scene she is in. She becomes a vocal point in the scene because it is important to the story. Color is amazing on camera, but it can be impactful, especially films that aren't reliant on color. I give this film 8.5 out of 10. I love this film. This is the type of film that isn't thought of too well when it came out. Even now with some time behind it, it doesn't have the same recognition and praise that maybe it should have. This is the type of film that gets a Criterion release, and finally we can see how impactful this film can be.
Shows himself in his true colors. He marches his troops into the Rhineland in defiance of the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. The curse of the swastika spreads its evil shadow.